Hi, and welcome back to this Monday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Let's begin by playing a soundbite from Jeb Bush. This is the, the question that is up at our Focal Point Facebook page, and I'd love to have you weigh in and love to see a vigorous debate there and discussion on the Focal Point Facebook page. Go to your own Facebook page, just put Focal Point in the search bar, and it'll pop right up. And here is the question. Jeb Bush, who wants you to vote for him in 2016, thinks that breaking our immigration laws, quote, is not a felony, it's an act of love, and that we shouldn't get, quote, riled up about it. So the question is, do you agree with Jeb Bush that it's not a felony, it's an act of love, and technically he's right, it's a misdemeanor if you do it once, it's a felony if you do it twice, but he's basically, it's not a big deal. It's an act of love. It's just people trying to take care of their families. And so we shouldn't get riled up about people breaking our immigration laws, trespassing on U.S. sovereign soil. We shouldn't get all riled up over that. What do you think about that? And how does it affect your inclination to vote for Jeb Bush in 2016? More likely or less likely to vote for Jeb Bush? Now, here is the soundbite, clip number 6. This is Jeb Bush. And he is talking about the issue of immigration. Listen carefully. This is a guy, ladies and gentlemen, wants you to vote for him in 2016. He wants to be your president. So I'm asking you, as a listener to this program, as you listen to Jeb Bush talk about immigration, and the big money people in the Republican Party love this guy. They're gravitating toward Jeb Bush. They think Chris Christie is damaged goods. They don't think Romney, they think Romney's had his shot. So the Republican Party elites, the guys that control all the heavy wallets, the power brokers, the Karl Roves of the Republican Party, this is their guy. This is the guy they want to be the Republican Party nominee in 2016. Here's Jeb Bush talking about immigration.
And there should be penalties for breaking the law. But the way I look at this, and this is not, I'm going to say this and it'll be on tape, and so be it. The way I look at this is someone who comes to our country because they couldn't come legally. They come to our country because their families, a dad who loved their children was worried that their children didn't have food on the table. And they, wanted to make sure their family was intact. And they crossed the border because they had no other means to work, to be able to provide for their family. Yes, they broke the law, but it's not a felony. It's kind of it's an act of love. It's an act of commitment to your family. I honestly think that is a different kind of crime that there should be a price paid, but it shouldn't rile people up that people are actually coming to this country to provide for their families. And the idea that we're not going to fix this, but with comprehensive reform, ends up trapping these people when they could make a great contribution for their own families, but also for us. So.
All right, so that's Jeb Bush. Yes, they broke the law, but it's not a felony, so he minimizes it. Let's not make a big deal out of this. It's not like it's a felony. It's not like he went out and robbed a bank or something. And by the way, under Jeb Bush's reasoning, why couldn't we justify a father robbing a bank as an act of love? He's got a family that's depending upon him. He's out of work. He doesn't have a job. He wants the best for his family. He wants to realize the American dream. And so he goes and robs a bank. I mean, it's an act of love. He's doing it for his family. He wants to provide for his family. He wants to give them a slice of the American dream. I mean, I honestly do not see how Jeb Bush could criticize one kind of criminal behavior and justify another. I mean, how do you justify committing a criminal act because it's an act of love in one case, and then say in another case, well, no, you can't do that. I can't justify that. That's a criminal act. I'm not going to let you get away with that. But you commit this criminal act over here, I will give you a pass on that because it's an act of love. Well, why wouldn't this act over here be an act of love? I mean, logically, rationally, morally, this makes absolutely no sense to me. So I'd like to see what you think. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. You can also weigh in by going to the Facebook page and enter into the conversation I got a comment from Laverne on the Facebook page. I don't agree with Jeb Bush, and I will never vote for him. So it's obviously hurting his status with some of those in the Focal Point audience. Now, let's play clip number 7 before we go to the phones. This is from Alan Burson. He's with the Department of Homeland Security. He is the Assistant Secretary of International Affairs. And this has to do with the immigration issue, people that come into our country and actually are legally permitted to come into our country. I mean, we allow them to come in. They come in through the front door and we wave them on through. And what Alan Burson says, if you can believe it, is we make no effort to keep registered sex offenders out of the United States. Let's listen.
There are registered sex offenders, but routinely that information actually would not come unless there's a specific case or a specific law enforcement inquiry, because in fact when a German gets on an airplane to the United States, CBP knows that he's coming, but the German authorities don't know that he's coming unless that German sex offender or murderer, unless that record is in the FBI database. We have no routine insight into what is in the criminal data records of other countries. That's the issue that Mr. Bray's entirely right, that if there's a specific case or a specific inquiry, NCB would receive that information. But the point is, it's not a routine data exchange because we don't have routine access to German criminal records any more than they have routine access, unless there's a case, to our criminal records.
So he says, look, we routinely allow sex offenders to immigrate into this country. Might be on a tourist visa, but we don't screen sex offender registries from other countries. We make no effort to do it unless there's a specific case, unless we have some specific reason to request information. We're not going to get it. We don't have access to their sex offender registries. They don't volunteer the information to us. So, this looks to me as just like another example of how what we need to do is we just need to find a better way to secure our borders before we talk about doing any kind of legalization of those that are here and rewarding them for breaking our laws. And I tell you, I've got a piece here by Russell Moore and Ralph Reed arguing that rewarding people for breaking our immigration law is a moral imperative. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine an evangelical like Russell Moore, Southern Baptist Convention, saying that what we ought to do is we ought to reward people who break the law. Now, how in the world is that consistent with any kind of evangelical view of the Scripture and the rule of law? And Ralph Reed, Christian Coalition, Russell Moore, Southern Baptist Convention, it is a moral imperative. It says we have an obligation, as evangelicals, we have an obligation to find a way to reward people who are criminal trespassers on sovereign American soil. I frankly do not get any one part of that. Their position is virtually indistinguishable from the position of La Raza. So we'll see how all of that plays out. Be interested in your comments. Let's grab some calls. Let's begin with Darren in Southern Illinois. Darren, let's grab a call from you. Welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. Good to talk to you, sir.
Good to talk to you, sir.
You kind of already made my point with the making it okay to rob a bank, but I was just thinking, if you rob Jeb Bush's home, it really wouldn't be a felony. It would be an act of respect out of the wealth he's accumulated, wouldn't it?
That's just an act of love, Jeb. I'm just in your living room loving on my family. I'm rifling through your family safe because I'm just loving on my family. It's an act of love, and I cannot tell you, Jeb, how much I appreciate the fact that I can commit an act of love right in your garage, right in your living room, right in your den, right in your family safe, and know it's not going to be a problem for you. You're not going to get all riled up. Well, that's a great point, Darren.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, listen, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. All right, let's we talked earlier in the hour about the reasons for the decline in religious affiliation. Still 78% of Americans are self-identified as Christians. Let's grab a call from Jake in Starkville, Mississippi. Jake, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Well, yeah, Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I mean, I have to agree on two things. One, you mentioned the fact that fathers have a great deal of influence over their children.
Yes.
And if a father is distance himself from church, distance himself from a relationship with God, that does translate into his children. And most fathers nowadays have no biblical understanding, which falls partly on the church as well, because so many churches have backed away from teaching their congregants how to defend their faith, that a father may say, a child may come to the father with a question about something biblical. He says, I don't know. Where's he going to turn? He's going to turn to the internet. And roughly 50% of the time, when you go to the internet and search for something biblical, the first page is usually going to be a skeptical article or atheist article about dealing with the issue.
Yeah. Well, and I think your point is very well taken, and I agree with it, Jake, that I think, the Daily Mail tumbled onto it when they said, look, the kind of religious affiliation that children observe and experience at home, particularly from their fathers, I think is the single most significant impact on how they wind up. Now, parents know this. I mean, Christian parents lose their children to the world every day. It's a tragedy. It's a heartbreak to a parent when that happens. I don't think there's anything that grieves the heart of a Christian parent more than seeing his own child wander away from the faith and get sucked into the life of the world. But it happens. And it happens because God has given the children of Christian parents a free will, and they can use it to turn their back on the heritage that they have received and show disrespect and disregard for the heritage they received from their parents. But the scriptures also indicate that children that are raised in the faith are likely to stay in the faith. And I think the point of Proverbs 22:6, when he is old, he will not depart from it. A lot of times children, as they grow to maturity, get into their adult years, they will come back to the faith of their fathers, but it has to have been there in the first place. Focal Point, AFR Talk.